Dominic, wedding DJ.
And this is Serena, wedding planner.
And together we are
The Wedding Duo.
We are here to talk all things weddings.
Planning a wedding can be stressful, but we are here to help.
So before you say, that's it, we're going to Vegas, don't go to Vegas.
Let's have some fun.
Join us as we answer your wedding questions and help navigate planning one of the biggest days of your life with
The Wedding Duo.
Hello, everyone out there planning a wedding. It is us, the Wedding Duo.
It is
Dominic
us.
and Serena back on the mics once more
It's riveting.
to bring you all the things you need to know about planning the big day. I'm wearing my DJ t-shirt today, the smiley face with the headphones.
We love that t-shirt.
I do. It's very fun. People comment on it all the time in videos like, where'd you get the shirt?
Yep. Amazon.
I said, my wife, I don't know if she finds me these DJ shirts.
I do. They're fun. I like to find you fun shirts.
I do. I have about a half a dozen of DJ-related t-shirts.
Yep. You should.
I think this was your best work, though, right here. It's a smiley face with headphones upside down that it looks like a smiley face. Like, I have a nice day.
It's a happy DJ. I'm wearing the hat and the oversized t-shirt today because it's Tuesday. And
It's comfortable. Is that our theme?
and we're in the office and yeah.
We're just recording a podcast that everyone will see forever, but, you know.
I'm all about being real. This
Be
is
real.
me.
Let's be realistic, people.
Mhm. Well, today we're going to talk about something that's fantastic in a lot of different aspects, right? Food. We're going to talk about food because we love food. You guys probably love food. And your guests love food.
It's a thing at most weddings.
Yeah.
The
I mean,
food.
and it's a big piece of the puzzle, right? Because it's expensive to feed your guests, especially if you've got a lot of guests. And it's something that sometimes can sneak up on you, the cost, I think. I've had a lot of couples that I've worked with that they book a venue, right? And then they start working on their guest list and they think they're going to do, 200, 250 people. And then they get a catering quote and they realize...
We're doing 75.
Yeah, they realize just how much per person that can cost. And so we're just going to talk about some of the options and yeah.
I mean, it's hard to argue that that's not the most expensive thing tied to your head count, right?
Correct. Yeah, tied to the per person cost.
Because even like booze or alcohol, I mean, a lot of that, you may not drink it all, but you take that home or whatever. And even though you might take some of the food home,
oh, it's different.
It's not the same. Like everybody has to come over to finish the brisket that didn't get eaten on the next day. And sometimes it works out because maybe you have a whole weekend planned, right? Married on a Friday, everyone's going to come over Saturday, or married on a Saturday, you're having a brunch on Sunday. Leftovers are a thing, boy, in our family, man. You better
Your
pack that
family
stuff
loves
up.
the leftovers for like way too long.
Yes. Oh, I'm not saying I am on board with it. I'm just saying it's a thing. My family is one of those families for sure. So, let's talk about when do people eat over the course of their wedding day?
Yeah. So it's important to, one of the firm times on a timeline, like one of the times that you will have trouble adjusting is dinner. Okay. And so
But that's not what I was asking.
I know. I'm getting there.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So when you're when you're looking at creating a timeline, sometimes it can be hard to keep in perspective, like when will people be hungry, right?
Yes,
because let's say, for example, you're getting married in the church and they only have certain times they allow you to have the ceremony. Okay. Maybe it's
often.
2 p.m. This
very
comes
firm.
up. And
we
we
do not get any flexibility often with the church.
Right. We've talked about this before where it's like, okay, so we have to do our ceremony at 2 p.m., but we don't want people to eat at 3:30, right? So then they'll do a gap. That's hard. And then they'll try to make dinner happen at a more appropriate time, right? So that's something to be mindful of when you're creating your timeline, when you're looking at where you're going to place dinner. Obviously, it has to be in line with when you have the ceremony. Do you have a cocktail hour? All that good stuff.
Yeah, because it's strange sometimes because we look at a timeline. We're like, this is next, this is next, this is next, and you have a time there, but you don't kind of wait. We can't have dinner at 3:30. Like, wait a minute, that's not. Or the opposite is, oh, we're not going to eat till 9. Like, oh my gosh.
Yes.
And sometimes in the summer things are just naturally later because you have more daylight. Winter things tend to be earlier because the sun's going down. You fit your 6 to whatever hours on that. Here's our 6 hours. When does it start? When does it stop? And it doesn't always line up nice with traditional eating times.
Right. And we've talked about timelines before in previous episodes and kind of how much time do you allow for each thing. So if you're getting married at a venue and not inside of a church where you're doing a mass, you usually will allow about a half hour for that ceremony. And then you'll do cocktail hour for, that hour of time. Then is when you'll move into the reception. And this is kind of when you make that decision about, are we going to go right into our dances, or are we going to allow people to eat first? That's a factor. But the other factor is, are you feeding your guests anything during cocktail hour?
That's what I was getting at. Like, over the course of your event, how many times is there food options available, right? Of course, we're going to have dinner. But yeah, cocktail hour. If you're having a big gap, and there's not a gap where you're not at the event, but like there's just going to be a long time before anyone sits down and has their food. That's something to eat during cocktail hour is advisable.
Absolutely.
And your guest will be very happy. And it doesn't need to be something big. Sometimes there's just like chips and queso or charcuterie board or nuts. Sometimes people have, since COVID though, there's not as many just stick your grubby
I'm not a fan
hands
of
into
putting
the
your
pile of nuts. I mean,
in the nut bowl.
I still see it sometimes. I'm like, let's get some tongs or a scooper or something to scoop. And then, of course, so there's oftentimes there's something to eat during cocktail hour. Then there's a meal. And then there's a trend lately with a late night snack.
Mm-hmm.
But if you have a condensed time frame, that's a lot to eat, right?
It can be a lot.
I can't tell you how many times the late night snack is, I feel like we just finished eating and all of a sudden I'm announcing there's a late night snack. I'm like, and I don't eat a lot at a wedding, but I see sometimes people did have a really big meal because I eat really quick. But I'm like, is anybody still hungry? I'm like, and then we had cake in between, the dessert. So that's a thing too. Like, just look at the timing and be like, because some people are like, and again, your caterer is going to be your expert on this. We're not caterers, but
we're not.
We interact with every vendor. There's more, I know probably more stuff about photography, videography, catering. I mean, both of us, because we just work with them in and out every weekend, and we are in the weeds with them. They know a bunch about DJing if they work with us, because same thing. I'm like, well, I can do this. And they're like, oh, I never thought about that. Like, these are things you learn as you interact with these other industries. But your caterer will be the specialist because they'll have things they do and then things they don't do.
But to that point, they're not necessarily going to worry about when these things happen. If you go and do your tasting and you add a late night snack and you say, serve the late night snack an hour after dinner, they'll be like, okay. Like, you have to look out for, and your planner can help you with this. Will people legitimately still be hungry at that point? And the other thing to consider is, because I've had this happen where they bring in the cute little Whataburger bags or whatever it is, you don't usually need your full guest count of those items.
Oh, for sure.
Because people traditionally will have left, or some of them won't be hungry. So there just tends to be so much left over. It's just something to consider cost-wise, saving yourself a little bit.
And that's what I was getting at, cost-wise. If because your caterer will ask you oftentimes, like, hey, do you want to do something? Do you want us to pass hors d'oeuvres during cocktail hour? What are we having for dinner? And then do you want a late night snack? And if you're like, oh, that sounds great. But then you get the bill and you're like, where can we start shaving stuff off?
Yeah.
And again, I'm sure the caterers out there are like, shut up, DJ.
No,
but
people value this stuff. They do.
You should. And they should, just like we do, right? So, maybe your guests don't maybe need that late night snack if it's already really, like I said, if you're just pushing your budget limits everywhere. That's one spot that you could potentially do it, because sometimes, like we did it this past weekend, I'm like, geez, I mean, we had dinner, then we had cake, and then now we're having a late night snack. I'm like,
it's a lot of
food. I love to eat, don't get me wrong, but I'm like.
So let's talk about the types of food, right? And like the different options for your meals. Okay, so we talked a little bit about cocktail hour, and you mentioned there are different options for that. You can set up a station where people go and grab their own, like you said, charcuterie items. You can have fruit there, yes, crackers, cheese, meat, that kind of a thing. Or you can get a little more fancy and have them passed, whatever that may be. There's a lot of jalapeno bacon wrapped jalapenos here in Texas, like those kind of fun things that are.
I've often seen meatballs on a skewer of a device. Like it.
Or how about a caprese skewer, right? Where we've got the tomato, the basil, the mozzarella cheese. So
I'm not
those
crazy about those, personally.
That's because you don't like
they
vegetables.
Look pretty. I just want to eat the cheese. I want to get that
Exactly.
Get that tomato out of there. Fling that into the bushes. And
I
eat
am
that cheese.
constantly fighting between our kids and you to eat the vegetables.
No,
You
I
do
love
not set a
vegetables.
good.
Just not
What
tomatoes.
vegetables do you love?
Oh, please. Don't even get me started.
Name a vegetable you love.
I love broccoli. I love it.
Oh,
I
you
eat the
love
beans.
like you would have,
Have we
it
not
just...
lived together for... I used to put it on my pizza like all the time.
Okay.
Like broccoli is fantastic.
Let's move on. But
Carrots, mushrooms. Oh, give me mushrooms all day. If there's a mushroom hors d'oeuvre, I don't usually eat them. But if I'm like, what do you got there? I was a stuffed mushroom. Tomatoes though. Blah, blah.
I like tomatoes.
Anyway.
So those are some options.
This is a good point though, because this is going to be your guest too. You were going to have all taste buds are going to be there. All, people that like this or don't like that. Something spicy. You've got your vegetarians. You've got your pescatarians, you've got your celiacs, your gluten-free. I mean, there's a lot.
Yeah, dairy allergies.
Dairy, oh my gosh.
Okay, but here's the thing with that. You can only worry about it so much, right? True. You could go down the rabbit hole of like, we need to make sure everyone they're catering. No. You can have some options, a veggie option. Maybe if there is a severe gluten allergy or, you know of this. And there's
peanut allergy. Yeah.
Yes, you definitely want to be aware of those things. But please do not make yourself crazy trying to accommodate like every single guest. You can offer things that they could have.
Yeah, but that's another thing to ask your caterer. If you say like they will have a vegetarian option.
Yes,
I mean, they
exactly.
are very aware of that. That's very common. And there's probably a lot of your guests are like, I just, I go to these events. I just don't eat the chicken or I don't eat the beef. I just eat the salad and I eat the potatoes. But if they think like, oh, you're going to offer me a vegetarian meal, they really feel like, oh, you're thinking of me. That's very sweet. So you can take a head count, put it on your RSVP, right? Mm-hmm. Or your
meal options.
Meal options. Here's what you can have. And then pass that on to your caterer. They are very ready for that question.
Yes. And this then leads us to not only the types of food, but how are you serving this food? Okay. And we mentioned a little bit about having it available at cocktail hour just out on a table or having it passed by the staff. But then when you get to dinner, there are several choices you can make, right? You can have a buffet style where it's on the tables there. And a lot of times, especially post-COVID, it's actually being served by staff. And what I mean by that is the catering staff is standing behind the buffet line, monitoring the portions and making sure, no one's double dipping with the utensils and just making sure that
they're not licking them between. That's not.
I just mean like taking more than they are supposed to.
Yeah.
Like,
okay.
I didn't say licking it.
No, but double dipping, it's the same spoon goes back in, even when the caterer is holding it.
But I never said licking it.
No, but you said double dipping. It's going to be like 5,000 dips in there, right?
Well, I mean, one person is taking 2 chicken breasts. That is what I meant. So we just want to, they're going to monitor that. And a lot of times they'll prepare the plates ahead of time so it goes faster. So that's buffet.
Sometimes I'll talk to my couples, like I said, and they mean like served or plated. But when we say plated, the caterers will bring the food to the table. The guests all sit down. Nobody's being released to the buffet. They sit, they talk. The food just magically arrives.
It arrives right there at their place. And the options here are you can have the same meal for everyone, right? Where you don't have like a meal choice. And this goes more with like, how are you doing your seating chart? We're not getting into that. Or you can actually have decided ahead of time, we need 20 fish plates. We need 20 chicken plates. And then you have to notate where those people are sitting. So there's options there you can have a choice of. The other thing we didn't talk about, though, is the salads.
Salads.
A lot of times your meal will come with a choice of a salad to start off with. And you may get asked the question, like, do you want the salads preset or do you want us to serve them? And sometimes the thinking here is that if you preset the salads, it saves time, which it does, right? Because the catering staff is able to put the salads out and then as guests are coming into the reception space, they're able to sit down and start on the salads. They don't have to wait for everybody to sit down, serve the salads, then serve the main.
I get asked sometimes, like, can you tell people not to eat the salad until I'm like,
I know.
There's no way.
Once we can do that.
Once they sit and that food and that fork are in front of them, it's under their nose. I'm sorry.
And they're not always paying attention to like what is being announced.
Yeah. And sometimes they're in there eating before I'm like running around. I realize, the doors to the reception have been opened.
Yes.
There's people that are licking the plate at that point.
they're hungry, right? So they get there, they get their food.
Not the tomatoes. They probably push those off to the side.
Possibly, right? Yes, because everybody hates tomatoes.
Foul weed.
Yeah, so that's something that you may get asked, and that's really up to you. The one thing that's like, for me, that I try to keep an eye on is how long are those salads sitting there for?
Oh, it's always a thing. Yeah, because once those are down, because the caterers, if nothing else, they're timing that stuff, right? They're like, when do I put the buffet out? When do I take the lids off? When do I light my sternos? That is, they've got it down to a science.
Yes. So that's
they
just something.
They don't want them sitting out there because people will complain like, my salad has been sitting, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you're like, yeah, they don't want to hear that, but they're like, but then what's happening? DJ, why aren't they introduce the couple? What are we doing? Right. So it's
Let's
a thing.
Get going.
There's timing involved.
Something that we don't see as often, but is a thing, are stations, right, for food. And this is kind of like a buffet, but different in the sense that, like, in different areas of your reception space, maybe you'll have a table set up and it's a carving station. They'll have meat, with gravy or whatever. And then another table in the other corner will have different salad options. Maybe
Sometimes
you have
a taco or a potato bar.
Yes, something. And that is really fun. If you're really looking for like this up and mingling type vibe where people aren't like forced to sit down and eat all at once, then they can go to the different stations, pick what they want to eat. It does tend to be a little more pricey, right? Because you're bringing in a lot of different elements. But I think it's fun.
It's something that if I see the stations in the room or if I have it in my notes, I go to the caterer and I'm like, okay, so what do we got? Because oftentimes they're on, like, maybe there's 6 stations, but 3 of them are the same as the other 3. And I don't want people thinking like, wait, that line is longer, this one's shorter. But then why is that one longer? Because it's better. And I'm like, that is the same as this one over here.
They're just trying to spread you out.
But for whatever reason, everybody went over there. So I go around and I ask and I make notes. And I'm like, all right, we're going to do stations here. We sometimes release tables, but sometimes it's just like, enjoy. And they just go.
Right.
But I'm like, and the guys are already at their posts, right? The guys, the non-gender specific, the people that are going to be at these stations, because they're usually still served.
Staff,
they're still usually monitored or have somebody at that station. And I'm like, so we have 2 carving stations here. There's 2 salad stations in the back, and then maybe the other ones are different. But I go, so look for the lines, people. This one's going to be the same as this one, just so they know they're not like, oh, I didn't go to that one. Like, that's the same as the one you just went to.
We've talked about this before, that signage, communication is key in these kind of things, right? And the food portion is especially true because people get hungry and they want to go eat and they want to figure out like where stuff is and how do they get whatever, So having the announcements made, again, having some signage is super helpful for whatever you're serving. Now, the last part of this we can chat about is food trucks, right? Because
it's a thing.
It's a thing. And people want to do a food truck because they love going to the food trucks. Mm-hmm. But it's not always the same as like for your wedding. Now, if you have a guest count of under 50, and I know we've talked about this on a previous podcast, it's probably not an issue. 50 and above, you need to make sure that this food truck can accommodate your guest count in a timely manner. You don't want people to be waiting in line forever, and your hour that you've allotted for dinner turns into an hour and a half, turns into an hour and 45 minutes because nobody's been able to get their food. I mean, it just happens because if there's one person there serving out of the food truck, it's just a lot.
Well, you just need to explain to the food truck. If they do weddings, you'll be like, this is a wedding. Exactly. They'll be like, I got it. Just like if you hire a wedding caterer, this is what they do all the time, every weekend. They're a machine. They got it dialed in. Whereas opposed to, we have our favorite restaurant and they agreed to cater, air quotes, to cater our wedding. This is not what they're used to doing.
Right.
And I know we've mentioned this before, but I always like to compare it to saying, like, if you're at a restaurant and nobody comes, you open up at 7, nobody comes in, nobody comes in, and then 8:30, 150 people all come in at the same time and they want to eat in an hour because they're going to go. That's not how a restaurant operates.
Right.
So it's not the same. It's not apples to apples, even though they're just doing food. So, and I did it recently. It was this little old couple and they were very sweet. And they were just like in tears almost because they felt bad because they couldn't get the food out fast enough. And I'm like, you had to
You have to
understand.
have
I know
these
you're like, oh, this
conversations.
is sweet. We like this couple. They're in a restaurant all the time. Oh, they want us to do their wedding. Like, say no. Just say no.
Yeah, just or have the conversation, be open about it.
Yes.
Maybe come in and do the late night snack. That's more manageable, right?
Sure.
Because people are going to come and go at their leisure during the dancing.
Yeah.
That's different. You can bring in a food truck for that. And as he mentioned, there are food trucks that do weddings. So we're not saying that's not possible,
Yeah.
but you need to just ask those.
And there are restaurants that do catering as well, if you love the food or whatever. But there are also caterers that don't have a restaurant and they just cater weddings and events, right?
Truth. Now, something I want to mention too is this has come up recently with a client, and something that is important for you guys to know in your venue contracts, and you want to look at this, it's probably required, or it should be, that whoever's doing the catering, that staff, that crew, stays and busses the tables and takes out the trash, right? And I know this sounds weird, but like if they are planning on coming at 6 p.m., dropping off the food and hanging out for an hour and a half while they serve and then leaving, this may be a problem for you.
Oh, it's how many times? 2 weeks ago, I literally stopped the mother of the bride because she was taking the trash out of the trash cans. I go,
yep.
Oh my God, you're in a gown. I mean, I was in a suit, but I'm like, get out of the way. Please let me do that. Because it was as heavy as can be. I was like, oh, actually help me pick this up. But that's what happens. Those trash cans fill up in a blink of an eye.
Well, and so there needs to be staff there to clean and bust the tables, take the plates away, take the cups, and they need to stay till the end of the event, in my opinion, because people are going to continue to drink. They're going to continue to have cake plates and forks and stuff. So that needs to get cleaned up. And the venues normally require this. So you want to look at your contract and look at that verbiage and make sure that you're aware.
Oh, just the cake cutting. That's a whole nother thing. Because caterers, usually there's a fee for that, right?
Correct.
And
it's not usually very much, but
it's not much, but but you want to talk through that because otherwise it's mom and your sister are over there. And it is a challenge to cut. If you've never done it, you're like, there's cake slices that look like a full pizza. Right. And they've cut them and they're huge and they're covered in frosting.
They're crumbling.
And they're just, they don't know, where do I put, I mean, it's a skill that the caterers know what they're doing.
Well, and here's the thing too. If you say like, oh yeah, my aunties are going to cut the cake. Okay. But auntie is like trying to hang out and have fun at the event too. Then she gets pulled away to be in the kitchen serving cake for, a half hour. Like that's not fun for auntie. So that's another thing. And a lot of venues, again, back to the venues, will require a professional, your catering company to cut and serve the cake.
Let's give a round of applause for the caterers real quick because caterers are out there doing good things.
They work so hard.
They do. And it's like when I show up and I see a good caterer or somebody I know, I'm like, hey, what's up? I mean, right away, I'm like, oh man, that part of the night is going to go smooth as silk because I've worked with them. Mm-hmm. They're dialed in. Just like when they look at probably me, hopefully they're like, oh,
yeah, right. When they see you come in, they're like, oh, yeah.
No, but I mean, but I'm sure there's like whatever the vendor, whatever the category is, and you're just like, oh, God, not this guy, right? I mean, we're still human. We're just like, all right, we got to pick up some slack here because we know it's going to be. Or if it's somebody who I don't know, I'm like, fingers crossed, like.
And usually we are pleasantly surprised.
Usually.
Not always.
But again, if you're trying to really DIY the food, just be ready for that because like she said, the bussing, the cleaning, the changing of the trash cans, the cutting of the cake, the timing involved, that's a lot. And I know you're like, gosh, it's so expensive, the caterers, but they do a lot. The caterers do a lot behind the scenes. And it's not the prettiest, most glamorous stuff. And if they're not doing it,
somebody's got to.
Mother of the bride should not be taking out the trash. I mean, I was just appalled. I was like, probably in the middle of an announcement, I'm like, ladies and gentlemen, okay, wait, stop. Stop everything. I'm going to help mom take out that trash.
You stopped an announcement?
No, I didn't stop an announcement. But I'm just saying, like, that's how urgent it was. Where I'm like, is she changing the trash bag in that trash can? I was like, oh my God, no. That
happens.
And then she had another one in her hand. I go, give me this. Go away from the trash cans, mom. That's not something I usually do. I don't remember having changed trash cans recently, but I'm like,
I know. I was going to say, I don't remember that either.
But not mom. No.
So the other thing to think about too is when you are giving like your catering counts, we talked a little bit about like there can be a split for the different meal options. Maybe you've got vegetarians. Do you have kids coming to the wedding, right? Because a lot of times, and we've talked about this before as well, they'll offer kids plates. So you can get a discount there a lot of times.
Less expensive.
And then there's an age range, right? Like kids are counted from 4 to 13 or however they put that out there for you. And then under 4, they don't count because usually they bring their own snacks or they're eating off mom's plate, right? Or however they work it out.
A bag of combined fruits that they just suck out of the bag, right? Which are really great, by the way. Those,
what are you talking about?
The baby things. There's a bag of it's the broccoli squash mix, and you pop that lid and they just suck that right out of the bag.
The applesauce texture? Gross.
They were so handy. That is like a parent's best friend. On a side note. And vendor meals. Did you talk about vendor meals?
And that's where I was going to. And then vendor meals. Now, sometimes caterers don't ask about the vendor meals, right? But a lot of times they do. They want to know how many vendors are we feeding. Sometimes they'll give you a discount for vendors. Sometimes they'll give us a different meal option. We've talked about this before too. So you're going to want to get those counts, put those as part of what you're telling your catering staff.
There's nights where there's 3 vendors. And there's nights where there's 15 vendors, right?
It's a lot.
So again, it's different. And again, every wedding is going to be different. But talk to the caterers about that too, because oftentimes I just jump in the buffet line at the end. And it's not really, it goes into the head count, but the caterers are going to be prepared for some, again, I don't want to speak on behalf of all caterers, but
check your contracts because they do include verbiage in there a lot of times for we will prepare a whatever percentage overage to make sure, you know what I mean? That's part of what you're paying for is to make sure they don't run out of food.
And most weddings, you plan for 250 and 210 are there or whatever. It's usually fewer people are there than you plan for, but
I don't know that I've ever had a wedding where. Have you had a wedding where
more people
showed up than where the guest count? I don't think I have.
Very rarely, if it is, and if it is, you're talking 1 or 2. And how does that even happen, right? Somebody brought their kids, or somebody brought a +1 and you weren't expecting it, but it's very rare.
I've had couples ask me and be concerned about that, but I'm always like, it doesn't happen. It almost always happens the other way. People say they're going to come and they don't.
Well, I think it was at one of our weddings, and it was somebody was like, hey, we need another chair at this table or whatever. And I'm like, okay, that's like the guest, I think, saying I want to sit with Uncle Charlie.
Oh, absolutely.
Or somebody just screwed up. Something got misaligned on the seating chart versus the how many, were there supposed to be 9 at that table when the rest have 8 or
it was absolutely they wanted to sit at that table.
It wasn't
yes.
Oh, we didn't know there's more people here than we planned on.
Yeah.
Because those of you that are in the weeds planning your wedding, it's very planned. It is very structured. It's not just I don't know. Somewhere between 100 and 300 people.
Yeah.
That's not how
That's a different type of event.
That's not how weddings work usually.
Well,
thank goodness.
Do you have anything more to comment? I've learned to ask you at the end because otherwise I get cut off.
I misquoted the Seinfeld quote earlier when I was talking about the tomato. I said something weed. What did I say? Gross weed.
This is a foul
weed. It's actually vile weed. That's what Newman said. Remember?
Vile weed.
Because he was picking up chicken for somebody else for Kramer. And he said, and Seinfeld goes, is that broccoli? You wouldn't eat broccoli if it was covered in chocolate. He goes, I actually love broccoli. And he goes, have a piece. And he took a bite and he goes, vile weed. And he spits it out. It was hysterical. It was Kenny Rogers chicken. Kenny Rogers chicken. It was
okay. So
you can't take this long. This is a load-bearing wall. My eyes are fried. Oh my God. It was a great episode for those Seinfeld people out there.
We made that correction so that everybody feels good.
You can just see him spitting out going, vile weed. There's people out there right now that are laughing, recalling that episode. Yeah, it was a great episode.
Yay.
Newman.
All right.
Congratulations, everybody out there planning your wedding.
Let me put in my little plug here.
You have a thing. Okay, you're going to do
Yeah, I do this thing.
Okay. That's what you do.
Follow us on TikTok, on Instagram. You can check out our what will be new website. It will definitely be live by the time this episode comes out. There's a lot of new information on there if you haven't been there before. Our virtual planning is available, and then our resources for download. So let's end this episode the way we always do.
It is your day.
Mm-hmm.
Food trucks, stations, catered meal, whatever you're going to do. But do it your way. Don't let somebody talk you into something you don't want to do or talk you out of something you have your heart set on. It's your day.
Kisses.
Mwah. Vile weed.
Happy wedding planning,
Bye.
y'all.
Hey, so thanks for listening to our podcast. If you found any of this information helpful and you know somebody who may be engaged or is a maid of honor, maybe you could tell them and share it with a friend.
Absolutely. So screenshot this episode, share it on Instagram, on Facebook, and tag the wedding duo. We promise to share the love back. Also, if you are interested in more resources or the show notes, you can go to theweddingduo.co. We have one-on-one virtual sessions, a shop, all sorts of fun stuff. Check it out.